who settles the price. For a woman it is a shame not to know sewing, dancing, and all kinds of woman's work, to pet her husband and children, or even to speak to her husband in the presence of a stranger. Open footnote. Veniaminoff, Memoirs relative to the district of Unalashka (open bracket, Russian), close bracket, 3 volumes, St. Petersburg, 1840. Extracts in English from the above are given in Dawes, Alaska. A like description of the Australian's morality is given in Nature 12, page 639, close footnote. Such is Aleut morality, which might also be further illustrated by their tales and legends. Let me also add that when Veniaminoff wrote (open bracket) in 1840, close bracket, one murder only had been committed since the last century in a population of 60,000 people, and that among 1,800 Aleuts not one single common law offence had been known for 40 years. This will not seem strange if we remark that scolding, scorning, and the use of rough words are absolutely unknown in Aleut life. Even their children never fight, and never abuse each other in words. All they may say is, "Your mother does not know sewing," or "Your father is blind of one eye." Open footnote. It is most remarkable that several writers (Middendorf, Schrank, Ofinch) describe the Ostiaks and Samoyeds in almost the same words. Even when drunken, their quarrels are insignificant. For 100 years one single murder has been committed in the tundra. Their children never fight. Anything may be left for years in the tundra, even food and gin, and nobody will touch it, and so on. Gilbert Sprout never witnessed a fight between two sober natives of the 8 Indians of Vancouver Island. Quarreling is also rare among their children (rink, lock, sit), and so on. Many features of savage life remain, however, a puzzle to Europeans. The high development of tribal solidarity and the good feelings with which primitive folk are animated towards each other could be illustrated by any amount of reliable testimony, and yet it is not the less certain that those same savages practice infanticide, that in some cases they abandon their old people, and that they blindly obey the rules of blood revenge. We must then explain the coexistence of facts which to the European's mind seem so contradictory at the first sight. I have just mentioned how the Aleut father starves for days and weeks, and gives everything eatable to his child, and how the Bushman mother becomes a slave to follow her child. And I might fill pages with illustrations of the really tender relations existing among the savages and their children. Travellers continually mention them incidentally. Here you read about the fond love of a mother, there you see a father wildly running through the forest and carrying upon his shoulders his child bitten by a snake, or a missionary tells you the despair of the parents at the loss of a child whom he had saved a few years before from being immolated at its birth. You learn that the savage mothers usually nurse their children till the age of 4, and that in the New Hebrides, on the loss of especially the beloved child, its mother or aunt will kill herself to take care of it in the other world. Gill quoted in Galen and Waite's Anthropology, 5th, 641. See also pages 636 to 640, where many facts of parental and filial love are quoted, and so on. Like facts are met with by the score, so that when we see that these same loving parents practice infanticide, we are bound to recognize that the habit (whatever its ulterior transformations may be) took its origin under the sheer pressure of necessity, as an obligation towards the tribe, and a means for rearing the already growing children. The savages, as a rule, do not multiply without stint, as some English writers put it. On the contrary, they take all kinds of measures for diminishing the birth rate. A whole series of restrictions, which Europeans certainly would find extravagant, are imposed to that effect, and they are strictly obeyed. But notwithstanding that, primitive folk cannot rear all their children. However, it has been remarked that as soon as they succeed in increasing their regular means of subsistence, they at once begin to abandon the practice of infanticide. On the whole, the parents obey that obligation reluctantly, and as soon as they can afford it, they resort to all kinds of compromises to save the lives of their newborn, as has been so well pointed out by my friend Elie Reclus. Primitive Folk, London, 1891. They invent the lucky and unlucky days of births, and spare the children born on the lucky days. They try to postpone the sentence for a few hours, and then say that if the baby has lived one day it must live all its natural life. Gerland, Locke 636. They hear the cries of the little ones coming from the forest, and maintain that if heard they forebode a misfortune for the tribe, and as they have no baby farming, no creatures for getting rid of the children, every one of them recoils before the necessity of performing the cruel sentence. They prefer to expose the baby in the wood rather than to take its life by violence. Ignorance, not cruelty, maintains infanticide, and instead of moralizing the savages with sermons, the missionaries would do better to follow the example of Veniaminoff, who every year till his old age crossed the Sea of Okhotsk in a miserable boat, or travelled on dogs among his Chukchis, supplying them with bread and fishing implements. He thus had really stopped infanticide. The same is true as regards what superficial observers describe as parricide. We just now saw that the habit of abandoning all people is not so widely spread as some writers have maintained it to be. It has been extremely exaggerated, but it is occasionally met with among nearly all savages, and in such cases it has the same origin as the exposure of children. When a savage feels that he is a burden to his tribe, when every morning his share of food is taken from the mouths of the children, and the little ones are not so stoical as their fathers, they cry when they are hungry, when every day he has to be carried across the stony beach or the virgin forest on the shoulders of younger people. There are no invalid carriages nor destitutes to wheel them in savage lands. He begins to repeat what the old Russian peasants say until nowadays: Chujoy vek zayedayu poran na pokoi. I live over people's life. It is time to retire. And he retires. He does what the soldier does in a similar case, when the salvation of his detachment depends upon its further advance, and he can move no more, and knows that he must die if left behind. The soldier implores his best friend to render him the last service before leaving the encampment, and the friend, with shivering hands, discharges his gun into the dying body. So the savages do. The old man asks himself to die. He himself insists upon this last duty towards the community, and obtains the consent of the tribe. He digs out his grave. He invites his kinsfolk to the last parting meal. His father has done so. It is now his turn, and he parts with his kinsfolk with marks of affection. The savage so much considers death as part of his duties towards his community, that he not only refuses to be rescued (as Moffat has told), but when a woman who had to be immolated on her husband's grave was rescued by missionaries and was taken to an island, she escaped in the night, crossed a broad sea arm, swimming, and rejoined her tribe to die on the grave. Erskine, quoted in Gerland and Waite's Anthropology, 5th, 640. It has become with them a matter of religion. But the savages, as a rule, are so reluctant to take anyone's life otherwise than in fight, that none of them will take upon himself to shed human blood, and they resort to all kinds of stratagems which have been so falsely interpreted. In most cases they abandon the old man in the wood, after having given him more than his share of the common food. Arctic expeditions have done the same, when they no more could carry their invalid comrades. Live a few days more, maybe there will be some unexpected rescue. West European men of science, when coming across these facts, are absolutely unable to stand them. They cannot reconcile them with a high development of tribal morality, and they prefer to cast a doubt upon the exactitude of absolutely reliable observers, instead of trying to explain the parallel existence of the two sets of facts: a high tribal morality together with the abandonment of the parents and infanticide. But if these same Europeans were to tell a savage that people extremely amiable, fond of their own children, and so impressionable that they cry when they see a misfortune simulated on a stage, are living in Europe, within a stone's throw from dens in which children die from sheer want of food, the savage too would not understand them. I remember how vainly I tried to make some of my Tungus friends understand our civilization of individualism. They could not, and they resorted to the most fantastical suggestions. The fact is that a savage, brought up in ideas of a tribal solidarity in everything for bad and for good, is as incapable of understanding a moral European who knows nothing of that solidarity as the average European is incapable of understanding the savage. But if our scientists had lived amidst a half-starving tribe which does not possess among them all one man's food for so much as a few days to come, he probably might have understood their motives. So also the savage, if he had stayed among us and received our education, maybe would understand our European indifference towards our neighbours and our